I just want to take the time out to say I'm very happy to be back on the Dempsey Show again. This is my second time back on the show. I think the last time I was on it was maybe 2 or 3 years ago, and a lot has happened in my life since then. One, I just recently just bought a new house. Thank you, Dimsley, for congratulating me on that. It's been a blast since I've been here. I got a lot more space to do what I can do. I can train. I can train privately. I don't have to worry about disturbing my neighbors as far as with the pounding of the bags and on beating on the wooden dummy and things like that. I have a lot more space to use my weaponry now. Which something I've always wanted to do because my weaponry, especially my Chinese weaponry, was really starting to suffer because I didn't have the space to train it. So I've been sort of reduced to like doing a lot of single and double stick, and dagger training in Kali, which has actually gotten a lot higher since then, But I'm just happy that I can just work on everything now. You had asked, what styles did I train exactly? Well, the first style I trained in was a combination Wing Chun and Southern Mantis. My godfather was a Southern Mantis practitioner who later learned Wing Chun when he had moved to Hong Kong. His name was Sheng. I was with him from the time I was 7 years old up until I was 14 for formal training, and then I went back at the same time I was animal because at the time his restaurant business started taking off, he didn't have a lot of time to really put in the type of training that he did years before earlier. But as I got older, I understood a lot better. So simultaneous studying with him and also studying with Seafood Larry Adams of Five Animals, I was getting kind of the best of both worlds. But Chinese are really known for their loyalty. So when I started my training in the Southern Five Animal system, I had to get permission, from George to study with Seafood Larry Adams because it was like the old traditional. I'm gonna write a formal letter, and I remember telling him that if he wasn't cool with me training Five Animal, I can understand that. But I was hungry for knowledge, and by this time I was a young teenager and I wanted to learn more. And I was training both systems simultaneous, the Five Animal and the still going back to my godfather with the Wing Chun and the Southern Mantis. When his time was permitted for me to work out with him. By that time, he would put me to work. I was washing dishes in in the Chinese kitchen. I was sweeping floors. That's how I paid for my lessons because I didn't really have to pay him. I paid him through working. Making sure that the napkins were in the napkin dispenser. Wiping the tables down, and make sure that the customers had everything they needed at their table. So. And even at some point, I had to take orders because he had a thick Cantonese accent, and so on and so forth. Uh, you had asked me the type of kicks that I train. Well, as you know, the Southern systems are not really known for their flashy kicks, but my Sifu Larry Adams, he had kicking because he was also a Northern Long Fist practitioner that he had learned from Grandmaster George Ling Hu. He studied that system, and I picked up a little bit of that too from him. Because he was teaching both Five Animal and the Northern Long Fist. But then when he broke away from George Ling Hu, he just focused mostly on Five Animal after that. I don't know what the fallout was, none of my business. But I can safely say that I picked up a lot of my kicks from watching Bruce Lee movies. Even when I was studying Wing Chun, I came into the martial arts because of Bruce Lee. You had asked how Bruce Lee inspired me. Well, it was through his raw talent. When I first saw, my dad took me to see Way of the Dragon, and from that then on, I was sold. That's what I wanted to do. Everything I got my hands on, book-wise, magazine-wise, about Bruce Lee, I wanted to read it. And the more I read it as I got older, the more it started making more sense to me. He wasn't my only influence, but he was definitely my major influence. Of course, I was influenced by a lot of other Hong Kong movie actors, Jackie Chan, especially the Lau family, Gordon Lau got fired, or Gordon Liu, as people know him as. His brother Lau Ga Lung, Lau Ga Young, all their whole movies, the whole Shaw Brother genre, Fu Sheng, the Venom Boys. I was influenced by a lot of them. In fact, it was one of the Venom Boys, Lo Mang, that got my godfather to start teaching me the Southern Mantis, because I remember when I saw Shaolin, I think it was Shaolin Rescuers, and Lo Mang was demonstrating Mantis. He was demonstrating Southern Mantis, and then there was another movie, Invincible Shaolin. He was learning it, and I started mocking the system. But his Southern Mantis was different from what my godfather was doing, because his was Chugar, and my godfather did Juke Lung. And I started demonstrating what I could from the movie, and my godfather's like, "That's not right. You do it like this." And he was showing me, and I was kind of like baiting him at the same time, but I think he knew what I was up to. And that's when he started showing me some of the Southern Mantis hands. He didn't go real deep with as far as like teaching me the Sambo Chin form and things like that, but he extracted from it. He also showed me a lot of the sticking. He had showed me some of the closing. He also showed me how the Mantis, the Southern Mantis, and the Juke and the Wing Chun system, how they are closely related, because they share a lot of the same fighting principles, such as simultaneous attack and defense, center line, immovable elbow, chi sao, sticking hand, and things like that. I would probably say, and this is not to say Wing Chun people don't do it, because Wing Chun does have an internal side, but Southern Mantis emphasizes it more. That's where I get, it was from the Southern Mantis where I got a lot of my abrupt, fucking, explosive, shocking force energy from, it's in a class by itself, actually, but to say which is better, well, that's the practitioner. Five Animal, has some of that as well, that I trained with C. Larry Adams, So I guess you could say, as a teenager, when I started teaching when I was 18 years old, I guess you could say I had the best of both worlds, but I was still a student myself. I was still learning myself, but like they say, you never realize how much you learn until you actually start teaching somebody. And at the same time, I was keeping myself up through my students and everything, and I would have to say, in the beginning of my teaching, I was more so using my students as a sounding board to attack me, because a lot of them had questions. Some of them were trained in martial arts. Some of them, especially a lot of Taekwondo guys, had a lot of karate guys. I had boxers. And even in high school, when I started showing my stripes and what I knew, and the reputation started growing, it was like every other day there was a Golden Glove boxer that I was fighting against, and there was a lot of Taekwondo people. So that was sort of my training ground, and always using it. It was always like, let's go pick on the little guy with the glasses, But I have to say that learning the martial arts all these years have been very good to me, and I've never done anything to hurt it. It actually made me a better person. It also gave me the confidence I needed, because as a kid, I was really off to myself and didn't say much to a lot of people. But I think when I started taking drama classes, and I started learning how to act, my teacher told me I had to learn how to project my voice. And by that time, I started teaching the martial arts at the same time, and that was sort of my training ground, to learn how to talk to a crowd of people. And since majority of them were friends anyway, I was very comfortable, to the point where when I started meeting more and more strangers, I didn't have that shyness to climb up, because I guess you could say I was a mealy mouth. I was just like, only time I would really speak up if I had a joke to tell you, because I love to laugh, So that was sort of my training ground as far as being able to teach, and just coming out and sharing what I had learned. And then I say right around 1998, I got my taste of JKD. I would say going back to the mid-80s, 1985, Guru Daniel Santo, Paul Vunak, and Cas Magda came to St. Louis to give a demonstration for CMA. CMA was the old California martial arts, and the founder, J.D. Amato, he had opened a place here in Missouri, and he would bring all these different instructors out to do seminars. Well, this one year he brought out Bill Superfoot Wallace. He brought out Ernie Hart, who was a local champion here. In fact, Ernie's a good friend of mine. I known his cousins. We all grew up together, going to school. Guru Dan, Paul Vunak, Kaz Maga, they all came out. They did a demonstration, and Guru Dan did his breathtaking Kali demonstration, and that was my introduction to Kali. And by that time, Vunak was an instructor, and this was before he started. This was pre-Navy SEAL, so at this time he was teaching, Jun Fan Kung Fu. He was teaching Kali, and I met him in 1988, and I followed him on the seminar trail for like 5 years, and to the point where he knew me by name, and he shared a lot with me. And since I was already a martial artist and very familiar with the trapping, that just sort of worked like a wonder drug. I mean, I compared when I was training with 5 Animal and was training with Vunak. I was like, man, I just learned 6 months material in like 3 days, And at that time, I started becoming disenchanted with the 5 Animal system. Not the system itself, but the way it was being taught. And at the same time, I have to say I was doing a lot more than I was giving. In other words, I became a system instructor there. I was teaching a lot more than I was being taught, and there's a lot of personal things I don't want to go into right now, but after all these years later, my 5 Animal teacher and I, we sort of reunited. We kind of put the past behind us, but it's all good. But as of right now, I've been training with a friend of mine. His name is Fleabag Johnson. Fleabag's not his real name. His name is Clarence. And he's been teaching me his homebrew style of Bagwajang and combining it with Silat. And he focuses more on the combative aspect than going through the forms, although he does kind of stress the form as far as holding your hands in position, because he looks at it like this here. He doesn't like to teach beginners. He only likes to teach advanced martial artists. And at the same time, it gives him a chance to work out his strategies as well. And, we sort of go back and forth and we sort of share, but it's more like me learning more from him because he's an older individual. He's like 55 years old, and he's been there, done that, got the t-shirt to prove it, and he's opened my eyes to a lot of things, and I think some of the same things that that Bruce Lee taught about refinement, he talks about the exact same thing. It's not about how much you know, but it's what you can use with what you know, and the things that hold true to yourself, and which something that I've always been doing, because I look at it like this: you can learn a lot of different martial arts styles, but if you don't know how to use them in combat, it's useless. If you have too much, then what are you going to use in combat? In other words, it's like, what are you really good at? And I always like to use the sandwich analogy. It's like, you can pile a big sandwich, but at some point you have to eat that sandwich. So how you going to eat a sandwich this big, where, you might have a sandwich like this, which would be much more efficient and much more simpler for you to eat. So I'm always stressing that with my students: simplicity and efficiency and directness, which I got from the JKD background. You would also had asked me who were some of the more famous and legendary martial artists that I had worked with, and others I've met. Well, of course, I had my training with Guru Dan. I didn't train with him alone, but what I did have was really good. But I mainly trained with a lot of his students, mainly Paul Vunak. I had the pleasure of being in the Bruce Lee Educational Foundation when it came out, and that introduced me to a whole lot of other students of Bruce Lee. And mainly I would have to say Ted Wong and Jesse Glover. I started training with them, as far as on the seminar level. In fact, before Sifu Wong had died, I had made plans to move to California, because I remember walking with him. We were in a parking lot in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and one of his students, Bob Landers, and I, we were all riding in a car, and we were going out to dinner. And when we came back, Sifu Ted was asking me a lot of personal questions about me and my life and things like that, and it was more so like that of a friend rather than teacher and student. And I had told him, well, my wife, who he had met, was in nursing school at that time, and he was like, well, in California they need nurses, so you should think about coming out to California. And I was thinking, I said, well, that would be great, but I would like to keep my training up if you would teach me. And he said, we can talk about that, once you come out there. And so I was really hyped to move into California. I was like, wow, he took me on. I always felt there was a fondness toward me, because I remember he inch punched the hell out of me at one point and also shoulder bumped me. And I'm like, wow, I remember he had me hold this pad, and when he inch punched me, and it's like, I kind of looked at it as karma because, I inch punched my students, but he had inch punched me and it felt like my glasses were still out in midstream, when he had hit me. So I kind of felt that it was sort of my baptism, you know. But I got to talk with him on a level that which made me think that he was willing to take me on as a full-fledged student, and I was really happy about that. But then once he had passed away, that really hurt me very deeply. It actually hurt my wife Jackie too. She was really hurt by that too because she really liked him. He was a really good man. He was a really great human being. And he was very personable. He called me by name. And like they say in business, it makes a big difference when a person calls you by name because they make it personal when they do that. And I remember he used me on occasion. When he would teach, which I also thought was quite awesome. And I'm just sorry that I didn't get a chance to pursue that much more. But what he have taught me and what I did learn from him, I hold in my heart. I still practice. I don't teach it, but I cultivate it and I make it my own. I'm still in awe of his footwork. I would have to say, out of all the JKD people that I have met, I'm still mesmerized by that man's footwork. I've dreamed about that man's footwork, and it's like, his footwork is awesome. I remember when I would read about him, people said that he moved like Bruce Lee, and it wasn't until I saw it for myself, from the neck down, yes, you would swear he was Bruce Lee, And and I'm not saying that he was imitating, but I guess you could say, well, this is the way it goes. This is the way the footwork is supposed to be done. And this is not to take nothing away from Guru Dan or Jerry Poteet or Larry Hartsoe and all the other guys that trained with Bruce Lee. But, it was just something about, Sifu Ted, And, Guru Dan is awesome too. As far as like his trapping and his use of weaponry and his overall knowledge. I think he was a history teacher. And so he also explains the history, especially when you talk about the Indonesian arts and the Filipino arts and things like that. And I still play with a lot of that with my own guys as well. You had asked me about some of the other martial artists. Jackie Chan is on my Facebook. Mr. Fong has been on my Facebook now for about a year. Fong is actually his family name. And I think he used his real name because one, he can't really go back to using it because Jackie Chan has become more of a selling point of his name. And he actually had to spell it in Chinese because there were a lot of imitators, pretending to be him. I'm also good friends with movie actor Conan Lee. I talk to him as if I'm talking to you right now, I had spoken to him on the phone, and there's a lot of things that's tied with that which I can't talk about, because he'll probably kill me if I talk about it, but it looks good for me on that front, though. And I've had a chance to meet a lot of other different martial artists, I posted recently about my experience with Sifu Eric Lee, and meeting him at the airport, when he was lost, and my student and I, we were helping him find his flight because he was trying to connect with another flight. I have also met, I met so many people. It's really funny because, Facebook has also hooked me up with a lot of different people that I never thought I would ever meet, and it's really funny. Some of these guys I grew up reading in the Inside Kung Fu magazines. I grew up reading about in various books, and then here I am talking to these guys. I would never thought that I would be friends with Sifu Randy Williams. And one of the first Inside Kung Fu magazines I bought, he was on the cover. And here we are tossing jokes back and forth on Facebook. It's really something. Hopefully I get a chance to meet him face to face, and and you see how that comes out. But Facebook has really been a godsend. A lot of my YouTube fans have moved over to my Facebook as well. And I think that's one of the reasons why I haven't posted so many videos on YouTube, because I've been posting them on Facebook. I said, well, I would say 80% of my YouTube fans are all on my Facebook, so I just post everything to Facebook. And because one, is more personal. I mean, because YouTube has been very great to me. I'm very grateful of the fans that have supported me on YouTube, because I know there's quite a few other fans that are on my YouTube account who are not on Facebook, so I still have to go back and forth and post. I would suggest any YouTube person that's learning martial arts from me, or anyone else for that matter, investigate it for yourself. If you can find you an instructor, that's teaching Wing Chun or is teaching JKD, sort out a bona fide instructor, so you can get that hands-on, that feeling, that touch. Because, I mean, learning from a video is good, but if you don't have the proper foundation, then all you're doing is you're going through an act. Okay, you're just going through movements. The movements might be correct as far as sight-wise, like occupying center line, because, I mean, you have a brain. Okay, and you have some people who are just naturally talented that can do it. And I would think, because I've picked up things from videos too, but the difference is that most people that have already a background, a foundation, they can pick it up like it's a new dance step. Oh, they're doing it this way. So it's like me picking up another, let's say, Southeast Asian martial art, or another art that's similar to Wing Chun. I can pick it up just at a glance. But let's say a person that doesn't have a foundation, he might be imitating the movements, but it's like he doesn't understand it. Well, when he talks about relaxation, what does he really mean? The only way I know how to get power is to tense my body. So it's like those little things. In other words, the video can't tweak your form. It can't tweak your structure. So in that sense, you do need an instructor. Now, I have had students, or should I say, I've had people from YouTube who became my students via Skype. They would talk to me Skype and get, feedback, or we would go back and forth and swap videos from YouTube. Like the guy who I helped with his kicking strategies and things like that. So that has been a good thing. But I still say, it's best to get an instructor so you can get that hands-on, that touch, that feel. Because I mean, it's really impossible to learn Chi Sao or sticky hand from a video. I mean, you can understand the rotation, but you still need another person, to do it with, so you can get that feedback. You can get that resistance. Okay? So with that, I'm going to take a break, and I'm going to come back, and I'm going to show you some of the workout tools that I use to get myself in shape, as far as the calisthenics, which I think is quite good, and some of the other training apparatuses that I use. Okay?